Not sure where to start here, but let's kick off with the Big Ben thing. I mean, nobody is going to buy this idea that this is not offensive or anti-Semitic, are they?
I don't know. I have not seen the slogan myself, and I've not been party to this conversation. I know I joined the conversation towards the tail end of what you were discussing with the earlier speaker. But if we go by the specific comment made by Suella Braverman, I'm afraid Suella Braverman lives off making headlines and making off-the-cuff remarks without thinking about the consequences. There are deep consequences in our country. You know, yesterday was it, or today, in your own channel, we had a couple of discussions about the extreme rise in anti-Muslim bigotry, Islamophobia. And Suella Braverman has just added further fuel to this anti-Muslim bigotry by writing quite carelessly throwaway remarks about Islam and the Muslims and how Muslims and Islam and Islamists are taking over the government. It's just a whole load of...
well, she does, just to correct something here, and I know that this may be a nuanced point, Ajmal, but she talks about Islamists as distinct from Islam or Muslims.
You know, it's very difficult, Ian, for an ordinary person to make a distinction between Islam and Islamist. When this young baby actually, in America was stabbed more than 20 times because a politician associated a Muslim child with anti-Semitism, an ordinary guy who thought it was his God-given right to go and kill him. Now, ordinary people out there, many dimwits especially, are inspired by people like Suella Braverman. They look for what they say.
But we know what she was talking about. She was talking about the fact that, you know, this country has one prime problem with extremism. There's lots of problems with extremism. There's a big old pie chart. I get it, right, ring extremism, etc. But right now, in the current epoch, we've had 7/7, we've had Westminster, we've had various other attacks. We have some of the protests. We have people calling for the destruction, the eradication of Israel and Jews. People chanted out of a theatre. I mean, I could go on. Lecturers in universities saying, well, anti-Semitism is a right of free speech, etc. All manner of things. Right now, we have an Islamist problem, Ajmal. You know it, I know it. I'd just like to hear you, as an imam, as a very decent man, I'd like to hear you say it as well.
Ian, you're not explaining for me what do you mean by Islamist, because you've conflated a lot in one sentence.
I've just given you lots of examples.
No, I know, but they're not all associated and they're not linked by one monolith, a group of people who have come together and conspired to do something like this. It's not true. The marches that we're talking about, the images that you're showing, thousands of people, actually 90% of the participants are non-Muslim, Christians, atheists, people of all background. To associate them all and put them under this so-called Islamist, I'm really confused. What do you mean? Please explain.
You don't know what I mean by that? I mean, if I'm looking, I don't know what the percentage, the breakdown is demographically of those
I've been to those marches myself.
But this is in the name, as many people will argue and contest on whether it is something as horrendous as a terror attack, whether it is something that's meant to be peaceful, such as a march. People will argue that it is in the name of a faith or their version of a faith.
You do know that the demonstration was organized by Socialist Workers' Party.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that. Those people are as bad as anyone else that I'm talking about here, some of those characters.
Let me finish my sentence.
They're part of the extremist problem, some of these people.
So to say that they are part of the Islamist problem...
Well, she says Islamist and extremist. She makes that point.
So I think the point we are making is the idea of Islamist or Islamism has been coined by people that I know very well, and I know where they're coming from and why they have coined it. Let's come back to the problem that we have. At the moment, the crisis in the Middle East could easily be solved. You know it and I know it. What's the problem? It's called 75 years of occupation. If the Israeli government stopped illegal settlements, occupation of Palestinian land, and was serious about giving Palestinian people their right to having their own state, this will not be a discussion. Gaza won't be where it is today.
Well, we could get, if Hamas, a recognised terror group, I'm sure you would echo those words with me as well, if they disappeared from the face of the earth, then this whole thing could move on, right?
But can you imagine the same language Hamas is using? If Israel disappears from this face of this earth, the trouble will be over. I don't agree with this.
Israel is not there's no comparisons, no equivalence between Hamas and Israel.
We're talking about the rhetoric, Ian. Rhetoric is very inflammatory.
Hamas terrorist group, Israel, progressive first world country.
Yeah, but it's a genocidal
country.
One
medieval death cult, one elected democracy. There's your difference.
36,000 people, 80,000 injured, 80% of Gaza flattened.
No, nobody wants to see that. Listen, we're not going to disagree on those fundamental points.
Ian, let's have a,
in terms of ending it, if we remove medieval death cults from the equation, we can all move on, Ajmal.
No, but that's not true, Ian. We know people like Ilan Pape, professor with a Jewish background, has written extensively, who said that's not the problem. Hamas was created.
Listen, I get
Hamas was created by Israel too. Don't forget that.
Nobody is going to... Well, again, it comes back to Braverman's point about extremism. Listen, Ajmal, I move on for no other reason than time. It's always good to have a chinwag, even if we disagree on certain elements of this.